their light frequency is the reddish to blue side things. If you're on a terrestrial body that has a magnetosphere, that's what our Earth has, it's what protects us from radiation. That magnetosphere and also its atmosphere will produce basically a purplish hue, all right? And it's a dull glow that is there. There is enough of that radiation coming from a sub-brown dwarf to provide that kind of illumination.
So you'd have more reddish types of plant life.
Yes, because when it comes to plants, what we know about plants is that they have a dormant gene called retinol in them. And retinol is it's a part of the plant that loves to suck in infrared to blue light spectrums and so on like that. It's dormant at the moment because when the plant, the chlorophyll that we see in it now, right, is really a reflective device to regulate the amount of ultraviolet light that hits the plant. If you're not in a high ultraviolet light environment, all right, you actually want to attract, all right, infrared, because it's the infrared medium and so on that really is what the plant craves. That's why all our stuff is green today. All right, it's actually saying too much ultraviolet. All right, it's actually an indication that you know, in terms of the evolutionary model, it's an indication that plants weren't originally designed for this, that they've had to go into the chlorophyll.
Yes, all things adapt.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's an adaptation, it's a later adaptation, because retinol is by far the older dormant gene. And this dormancy, we can see this because if I can give somebody an illustration, if you go to a certain depth in the oceans,
I was just thinking the same.
You are starting to get the kind of environment that we're talking about on a terrestrial body trapped.
The brownish and reddish plant life in the ocean, yes.
All that seaweed and so on like that, okay? So as you get closer up, you get your green seaweeds as you get closer to the surface. This shows how plants behave.
And you are in that twilight when you're underwater, well, until you honestly, go down far enough, you're in no light.
If somebody really wanted to go and experience what it might have been like to get an idea of the thing, you know, dive down into those oceans.
That was what was striking me as I was looking at these pictures and so forth. So now, because we've got so much ground to cover, I just wanted to get into that a bit about what life was like at that time, perhaps. And so now we start moving forward. What happened to Saturn? Why was it, so to speak, banished? And the sun is now the predominant theme, and let's talk about the Silver Age, the Golden Age, and just lead us into the body of the subject we'll be discussing.
Well, when you're on a planet in relation to a star like Saturn at the time, the first big noticeable thing of there is you have a different gravity, according to the electric universe model. Okay, a co-author of mine on a recent book that I've done made his name in basically showing that the massive fauna that we've seen in the past, from mammoths going back to the dinosaurs, this sort of thing couldn't have existed in the gravity that we have today. They simply would collapse.
Well, it's interesting because there are giants that are found too that have been found with bodies perhaps between 25 and 35 feet tall with much more porous bone density. I've even held one of the occipital bones of one of these. It's much more porous than ours.
It's a big problem, particularly for the dinosaur studies, because they find them even bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just getting ridiculous.
Giant things that were flying at the time.
We know that when a blue whale beaches itself, it collapses under its own, you know, its own weight. We know that they had 10 million years ago. Science tells us that they had giant boa-like snakes. They call them titanoboas. All right, they had to have been aquatic because they would have just collapsed under their own weight.
Unless there were a difference in the external or ambient environment or
that's
gravity.
Right. And what we're saying is that the electrostatic relationship between a sub-brown dwarf and a terrestrial planet like Earth will actually change the gravity. You'll get a different gravity. All right. Now, to answer your question, when you're in a system like this, you have no idea what's out there. You only have this dull thing that doesn't move at the top, because either you're in a phase lock situation with the star, like the moon is with the Earth, or you're in what we propagate, which is a axial aligned polar configuration. But in any case,
so it's a very static reality.
Yeah. There's just nothing there to grasp
to gauge anything.
Everything is nebulous and changing all the time. There's no continuity. There's no regulation.
So now let's talk about what happens to Saturn when the sun takes its position.
That plasma bubble that we're talking about. Okay, the sun has one. It's called the heliosphere, and it's massive in comparison to sub-brown dwarfs. When you get these two bubbles that start to drift towards each other, all right, you're essentially going to get an electrical reaction because they're electrically driven according to the electric universe model. All right, the problem here for Saturn is that it is positively charged to Earth in the electric sense, but it's negatively charged to the sun. All right, the sun is a lot more powerful, and when its electrical field, because that's all the plasma sheath actually is, all right, touches with the electrical field of a larger object, the sun in this case, you get a short circuiting. All right, now that stuff that we were talking about before, plasma, all right, it exists in currents between celestial bodies. They're called Birkeland currents. They were discovered over 100 years ago now by,
And you illustrate this in the book as well, and the way ancients may have depicted it, what they were actually trying to show us.
Absolutely.
About the cosmology of the day. It's brilliant.
To jump to that, Jacob's ladder, the primordial tree of life, these chains of spears that go up into the heaven, the stairway to heaven. All these archetypes are linked to this grand cosmic current that when Saturn is excited electrically will go from virtually invisible, all right, which we call dark mode. It'll go into glow mode, and when it really gets hit by a powerful electrical source,
like the heliosphere,
it'll go into arc mode. Now, that's quite an amazing thing to see.
Well, and you show that you have this depiction of the people of the day. Blinded by the light.
Well, that's the thing. Is what we're talking about here is that in coming into contact with the heliosphere of the sun, all right, Saturn virtually goes nova. Now, tying it back to your mythology, this is the let there be light moment that most cultures actually talk about. All right, it's a sudden bursting forth of Saturn's power, because from the Earth's perspective, they don't know it's the sun doing this. All right, all that happens to them is that they're suddenly this dull object just bursts forth in absolute brilliant light and proceeds to bathe in a radiance that has never been seen before.
I can't imagine that people could have even
survived it. Catastrophic.
Exactly.
Beyond belief.
And animals, yes.
And yet, it seems to have triggered within humans a sudden realization, hey, I can see things a little bit differently now.
And it seems like we've only scratched the surface, but again, there's a resource. Thank you so much for your time, Troy.
Oh, look, thank you. Thanks so much.
Again, you can go to Troy's website, SaturnDeathCult.com, and it perfectly lays this story out, well illustrated and well worth the time. Until next time, thank you for joining us here at Gaiam TV in London.